Having achieved correct roller-to-roller setting, we become involved in setting the inking roller to the plate itself. First, run ink up the rollers with a used plate on the press. With the press stationary, drop the inking rollers onto the plate and lift them off. Turn the press and you should see 4 stripes on the plate that correspond with the 4 inking rollers. At first, the width of some stripes may not be equal, or perhaps some parts may not even be in contact. Simultaneously, work on the appropriate adjustment screws with the white painted rings. There are 4 on each side of the press. Adjustment is complete when 4 even stripes are visible after the rollers have been lowered. Remember, the width of these stripes should be only 2 millimeters, no wider. We don't want any heavy roller settings to slow the ink film on the plate. Now let's move on to damper roller settings. Dampers are inserted moist. Make sure the roller locks are secure. Settings are done in a similar manner to the inking rollers when you are setting roller-to-roller adjustments. However, with conventional dampers, roller-to-plate settings are usually done by checking the slight bounce as dampers move across the plate. Bareback dampers used for alcohol damping systems may be set in exactly the same manner as inking rollers, as they are usually in contact with the cylinder bearers. Therefore, they cannot indicate bounce as conventional dampers would. Another adjustment to consider is the ducted transfer roller pressure. It's adjusted here by shortening or lengthening this control arm, which determines the degree of transfer movement from fountain roller to oscillator. Because of the unusual nature of the GTO damping system, drive to the lower plate damping roller must be via an additional steel rider roller. Make sure that the rider is securely located in the slanting sockets. Pins on the end of the shaft should rest on the pins of the socket brackets, with the grease nipples facing outward. When setting up a press for make ready, it's always necessary to check the thickness of the paper or board that's to be printed. It's easy to understand that if the impression cylinder is set to give 0.1 millimeter pressure on paper and the next job is on board, then forgetting to back off impression cylinder adjustment may result in a jam on impression. The adjustment is done by the 2 knurled wheels above the delivery. They adjust the pressure between the blanket and impression cylinders. The scale is indicated in metric, and each division represents 0.1 of a millimeter. When the scale reads 0.1 on the black, the machine is set for 0.2 millimeter stock. When the scale reads 0.2, the machine is set for 0.3 millimeter stock, and so on. Essential to high productivity is the smooth running of the feeder. You can imagine if the press is constantly starting and stopping, stability of that crucial ink and moisture balance is lost. So the time spent taken to ensure trouble-free feeding of sheets is time well spent. Let's begin. A stack of paper must be properly trimmed, aired and knocked up if it's to feed well. Here's the procedure. Position the sheet centrally on the feed table. This is necessary for even spacing of cylinder grippers at the edge of the sheet. Thoroughly air the stock before loading, ensuring that any burrs on paper edges don't cling. Let's look a little closer. Take a comfortable handful of stock, with the thumb slack, move it into AU shape, grasp firmly, then rotate the wrists and you get a bow shape in the cross-section. You'll see daylight through it. Load the aired paper carefully and position rubber separator fingers accurately. Set air blast, tilt and pile height to suit the stock being run, ensuring that only the first 8 sheets or so rise in the separator air blast. When setting the side lay, check the numbers on the feed table and set the side lay to the same number on its shaft. Also ensure the micro side lay adjustment is centralized. This should ensure that the side lay clears the sheet by 3 millimeters when it drops. Make sure this clearance exists, otherwise the side lay may pin down the sheet when it activates. Select the 2 front lays that will best support the grip edge of the sheet equally and disconnect the remainder by winding them away in an anti-clockwise direction. Distribute sheet smoothers evenly across and just above the sheet. Then place the 2 sheet brushes towards the back of the sheet and set them in contact with the sheet to prevent bounce and misregister. Then set the 2 sheet protector carefully. Now for the delivery. Place a sheet on the tray, centering it sideways, with the joggers fully inward. Then set these and the rear sheet stop to suit the size of the sheet. The GTO is now ready to begin feeding. Move the single lever control to run and flick the white toggle switch at the feeder. Sheet feeding will now commence, but without printing pressure. Check for the following features. Good sheet separation. No doubles. Correct amount of side lay sheet clearance. No bouncing of the sheet. And good knocking up in the delivery. We're now ready to fit the plate to the press. Let's do it accurately so that we won't have to shift it around to straighten the print. Here's the procedure. Flick the impression on button to on and move the main lever control to impression. Pin the inkers in the off position by inserting the small Tommy bar here.